Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Black Ops Cold War in Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the Magnum revolver. In my opinion, the Magnum is not a very good weapon in Cold War, or perhaps I should say the single Magnum is not a very good weapon in Cold War, but it can be super strong when run with Akimbo. Akimbo Magnums are fluky in the sense that they are hip fire and they are random, and sometimes you do miss in ways that you can't really control, but they do have the potential to truly insta-kill people. And I know I talked about this a bit in the Diamatti episode, how it'll one burst anything. The Diamatti kills very quickly, but it still takes multiple shots. The Akimbo Magnums are truly an insta-kill. You pull the trigger, both shots hit, and the enemy is dead. They are removed from the game, instantly deleted, just like a sniper headshot, and that is a really powerful secondary weapon to have available at your disposal. Instead of plugging my creator code today, I'm just going to give myself a shout out. I want to tell you guys to check the description to see my other content channels. I have a Twitch channel where I stream daily, primarily in-depth stuff, a YouTube Shorts channel that I'm experimenting with at the moment, Twitter to complain about Orange Man Bad and various funny clips, and of course a vibrant Discord community with tons of topics and boards, Call of Duty, anime, real life guns, all sorts of stuff, so do check them out if you're interested. But let's talk about the stats of the weapons now. The Magnum bullet velocity is 300 meters per second, which is the fastest in the pistol class, but it's really not that fast. And I do want to clarify that I actually noticed that I misspoke and miswrote in the Diamatti episode saying that was the fastest, but that's not true. This one is actually the fastest, but it's not the fastest by much. It's like a little bit better than the 1911, a little bit better than the Diamatti, a little bit better than an average submachine gun bullet, but still falls well behind that of assault rifles and other heavy weapons. The maximum damage range is 21 meters, which is very similar to the 1911. I thought that the Magnum would have the longest damage range amongst pistols, but surprisingly it does not. That goes to the Diamatti of all things. So the damage range is good, especially good for a pistol, but it's not crazy, and it's really not especially crazy for the only pistol where I would think that players would want to use it long range. The pistol that comes with a sniper scope, the one that you would think would two-shot across the map, might really not. So the Magnum base damage has 3 different profiles: 75 up close, 54 at medium range, and then 49 at long ranges. If you run the Task Force barrel on it, which is the final unlock barrel, that'll be 88 up close, 63 at medium range, and 57 at long ranges. So the Task Force barrel can help you in long ranges, but not up close, or not in like 99% of your engagements with this pistol. In my experience, regardless of what barrel you're running, it's usually 2 to 3 shots to kill, and I would say usually 2 shots to kill. I try to make it a 2-hit-or-quit weapon. If I'm so far away from my enemy that I need 3 shots to kill them, then I'm probably just too far away to be fooling around with pistols in general. You really should be 2-shotting people as much as possible, and unfortunately, the damage bonus on the Task Force barrel is not enough to get 1-shot headshots. You can't 1-shot headshot with the base weapon or the Task Force barrel, of course, outside of hardcore. I really thought that there would be an option to get like a super heavy loaded Magnum round and just dink people in the head and delete them no matter how bad it kicked, but that isn't really the case, and probably for the best for balance reasons. I'm sure you guys would find creative ways to abuse that. So even though the Task Force barrel won't change my shots to kill, I still use it when akimbo just because it's funny to boost the damage up that high, and sometimes when I'm using akimbo weapons, I'm fighting enemies that are already weakened by my teammates and I might miss one of those 2 shots. In those critical instances, sometimes it is better to just deal more damage. I might finish somebody off instead of leaving them very, very weak, so I still use it with minimal downsides. The Magnum rate of fire is 180 rounds per minute, which is very, very slow. This isn't a whole lot faster than a lot of the sniper rifles in the game. Your follow-up shots are not going to come quickly for this one, which means when you math out even a 2-shot time to kill with that slow rate of fire, it's still 333 milliseconds, which is not very fast. If you were to clump all of the weapons in the game and average them together, they're probably going to float somewhere around 300 milliseconds, and you're approaching slow time to kill categories about 350 to 360 milliseconds. So this is closer to average than it is slow, but it's a little bit slower than average and not something that's super impressive. The Magnum is also very hard to use and very unforgiving. Missing just 1 shot will lose you most gunfights because your follow-up shot will take so long to land and the recoil can be so problematic and you'll lose track of your target. Even though it might have a faster time to kill than the Diamatti, it's just going to be a lot harder to use than the Diamatti, and your effective time to kill is thus going to go down as you start making mistakes. But like most of the other guns, there's no downside whatsoever to running Akimbo Magnums, except I guess, you can't aim down sights, it becomes hip fire only, but there are no other penalties that I know of, which means it only takes 2 shots to kill, and since you have 2 guns and 2 fingers, you pull both triggers once and it becomes an insta-kill weapon, as we discussed in the beginning. A true insta-kill, not so much damage from the burst that it kills quickly, but an instantaneously removing people from the game kind of insta-kill, which is awesome. And just like the other weapons, do keep in mind that with Akimbo, the attachments that have ADS time penalties or recoil downsides, or some of the other downsides really won't matter at all. So you can perhaps hyper kit or more efficiently kit the weapon when it's Akimbo, and I strongly prefer Akimbo over the single Magnum. There really is no comparison. Yes, I can like theoretically kill people with single Magnums, I can pick off bad people, but I would never ever in a million years take a single Magnum into an actual game where I wanted to win or care about stuff like that. I would definitely rather have the Akimbos. I want to point out that the Akimbo Magnums are a tad fluky if your shots don't hit, and that can totally happen. They're random, it's hipfire, it's RNG. Sometimes you just line people up and shoot, and your shots just go sideways and wild. Because of the hipfire tightness and a lot of other factors, in theory, you can actually one-shot kill people at pretty impressive ranges, but I find that my probability goes down too much, so I personally prefer to be close quarters combat while using them. With Akimbo Magnums, there is a certain skill at understanding your ranges and probabilities, and I do this primarily based on feel. Within a certain range, you are very likely to get that one-shot kill and almost certain to get the 2-shot kill with Akimbos, and that's kind of where I try to position myself when using these. I don't really like to go for the longer shots. When it comes to the single Magnum, recoil is very high, but it mostly resettles before you can fire your second shot. It's a lot like a sniper rifle in that regard. You'll pull the trigger, it'll kick up really hard and fast, the barrel of the gun will block half of the important things you need to see, but it will recover quickly, and in most cases, your second shot, you will be able to see the enemy clearly, albeit briefly, before you follow up. I find that the iron sights are quite small, the red dot sight shakes a lot, and even the long-range scopes are all kind of rough when the gun is kicking this hard. It's not necessarily so much that they look bad or that they're unclear, but that the animation on the barrel of the weapon causes the entire gun to kick backwards to your face, much like a real 44 Magnum would, which, by the way, guys, if you go to the gun range, don't rent the 44 Magnum. It's just an absolute miserable weapon to shoot. It's not even fun. I would never use that in real life whatsoever, and that's exactly what's going on in the game here. It just kicks so much you can't even see what you're aiming at. I do admit that the long-range scope, which isn't a sniper scope, it's more like a holographic sight, it can be funny to use, kind of like a DMR against enemies that are unsuspecting. There's something about it that is DMR-like, that's very kind of trolly, like the blunderbuss, and you can still kill people with it, but it's not the best. This isn't a necessarily good strategy. It's just a very niche one. When it comes to handling stats, the Magnum has a few things that are unique. Aim down sights times 225 milliseconds, same as the other pistols, but sprint out time is 183 milliseconds, or a frame faster than the Diamatti and 2 frames faster than the 1911, giving it the fastest sprint out time in the pistol class, making me think maybe it's made for Akimbo. Maybe that's what we're supposed to be doing with it. And a fast sprint out time is just great since I'm going to be running it Akimbo anyway. It has the standard pistol hip fire of 6.5 milliradians, which is a little bit tighter than SMGs, but not tremendously so. The base reload time is 6.3 seconds, and you're going to be reloading this one bullet at a time. It has a realistic revolver reload speed. It's not fast. Thankfully, you can equip fast mags. They're a godsend, and somewhat unrealistically, you can equip 12-round fast mags and 12-round extended mags, and there's all sorts of magazine choices. As you level up the weapon, going from 0 to whatever your goal is with it, getting these 12-round mags and these fast mags will just make a world of difference for you. That'll change the weapon from being able to kill one person to being able to wipe teams, depending on how good you are with it. So in my opinion, the single Magnum is a terrible weapon to use in almost any scenario. It's just really hard, really unforgiving. Even the single in itself is fluky. It's difficult to see the targets. Most of the other weapons are going to have a better time to kill. You don't really have many advantages just running the single Magnum. However, Akimbo Magnums are almost the very definition of high risk, high reward. They are godly. You can just run around and doof delete people like the old fire shotgun from Warzone. And I'm going to say that most of the time, you can one-shot kill enemies. One shot as in a single double trigger pull because 2 bullets come out, as you've seen for most of this gameplay. For most of it, you can just remove people from existence, and I love that. but sometimes you do go on missing streaks. It is random. You are gambling a bit. Sometimes they can absolutely betray your trust and not hit the broadside of a barn, and that's just rough. However, I do find them to be very reliable within a certain close range. I played with them a bit, I practiced with them, and the more you play and the more practice you get, you'll find it pretty easy to consistently delete people with one shot, which is how I started going on these long streaks, and they're really strong if you're going to be running the gunfight 3v3 map. Since most of those are close quarters combat anyway, you can go on some pretty gnarly streaks there. So without any further ado, let's talk about my recommended Magnum classes. This is the class you've been seeing me use throughout most of the video today. I'm going to be running the Sound Suppressor, which has the least effective range penalty and keeps me off the radar. I do not like being on the radar with these weapons because I'm gambling with them, and being silent allows me to gamble a little bit more before the entire team turns around and hoses me. I like using the Task Force barrel to increase damage in case I'm fighting enemies that are weak. It gives me a little bit of effective range, a ridiculous amount of bullet velocity, and the only downside is less starting ammo and a whole bunch of recoil penalties that I don't even have to deal with when I'm aiming down sights. The starting ammo you would think would be bad, but by the time I put the 12-round mags on it, it'll be fine. SWAT 5mm laser is an absolute must. It tightens up your hipfire more than anything in the game. You pretty much have to have it or the gun's not useful. I run the final salvo 12-round magazine, which has a huge aim down sights time penalty, but since I can't ADS, that doesn't really matter, and all of the other benefits are fantastic. It gives me more starting ammo, more base ammo in the magazine, faster reload, everything's gravy, and then of course dual wield, which has no consequences other than doubling my weapons and not letting me aim down sights. It's a very simple class. It's very similar to the Akimbo Diamati class, and it works very well. It doesn't work as well in Warzone. I wouldn't recommend running this in Warzone, but it can be an effective backup weapon in Black Ops Cold War multiplayer, especially in the 3v3 gunfight maps. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of In Depth. I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.